So our presentation today is U.S. foreign aid. And a question that can come with that is, well, what is foreign aid? And foreign aid is aid sent from one country to another. And this can come in several forms, but I'm going to talk about just the ones that you're going to need to know for today. And humanitarian aid is aid sent to improve the quality of life in a recipient country, whereas developmental aid is aid meant to improve the infrastructure in the recipient country. Militaristic aid is meant to improve the military in the recipient country. Economic aid is sending money through loans or grants to the recipient country. And tied aid is sending money to a recipient country, hoping that in return you'll get uh, increased imports or something. So it could be me sending you $1 million and then saying, hey, with that $1 million, you're going to have to import goods from my country. And so that's foreign aid. But for the rest of this presentation, we're going to be talking about U.S. foreign aid. So we're going to give you some history on U.S. foreign aid. We're going to give you some benefits that come with the U.S. sending foreign aid and receiving it. We're going to talk about the economic shifts globally that are associated with it. We're going to talk about some concerns associated with U.S. foreign aid, which have been pretty prevalent lately. And that's where we're going to try to answer the question, is the United States sending too much money overseas to aid in modern war efforts based on our understanding from this presentation? And now I'm going to give it to Gentry to talk about the history of U.S. foreign aid.
Let's dive into the historical context and significance of U.S. foreign aid, contrasting its pre- and post-World War II approaches. Before the war, U.S. aid primarily took the form of loans that required payments. This strategy focused on financial returns rather than diplomatic or humanitarian impacts. However, the conclusion of World War II marked a pivotal shift in U.S. foreign policy. Recognizing the strategic importance of reconstruction and political stability, the U.S. became more generous in its foreign aid. The countries we give money to are listed on the graph. As shown on the graph, programs like the Marshall Plan exemplify this shift, where the U.S. provided substantial grants and assistance to war-torn Europe. This aid was instrumentally not just in economic recovery, but in securing U.S. political favor, influencing the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War era. The impact of this aid was profound. Countries receiving U.S. assistance saw accelerated reconstruction and economic revitalization, which contrasted clearly with nations that did not receive similar support. These efforts are not only facilitated quicker recoveries, but also fostered strong alliances and positioned the U.S. as a global leader in the post-war world. Understanding these transitions helps us appreciate the complex motives and significant effects of U.S. foreign aid, both historically and contemporary contexts. Building on the pivotal role of U.S. foreign aid in shaping global political and economic landscapes post-World War II, we can observe the broader economic shifts that have emerged both globally and domestically. These transformations are directly influenced by the strategic deployment of foreign aid.
The economic shifts associated with foreign aid. Starting with the global shifts, development in recipient countries. Also, it can help reduce poverty by directly addressing vital areas like healthcare and education. Foreign aid can raise economic productivity, life expectancy, and literacy rates. Um, can cause dependence and distortions economically by lowering incentives for nations to establish strong tax structures or undertake essential economic reforms. And over-reliance can lead to inefficiencies. This reliance runs the risk of impeding long-term growth and sustaining cycles of financial dependence. The impact that has on reform incentives, aid closes budgetary gaps that may otherwise spur policy changes, and recipient nations occasionally put off enacting political or economic reforms. Institutions and governments may be weakened by this distortation. Uh, you go to the next one. The next part is domestic shifts. Um, it boosts exports by mandating that products and services come from the United States. Foreign aid helps American businesses. This tied aid helps industries like construction, medicines, and agriculture, since funds and contracts frequently go back to U.S. based businesses. For instance, up to 80% of USAID support go to American businesses, which indirectly promotes the creation of jobs at home and increases exports. Stabilizing international markets and domestic gains. Foreign aid indirectly lessens global crises like refugee waves and wars that could impede international trade and hurt American markets by promoting economic development and stability in recipient nations. The aid to weak governors, for example, promotes global supply chain stability and helps avert expensive humanitarian crises, which benefit domestic companies and lessens economic shocks. All right.
Modern examples of the US foreign aid. One of them is the Ukraine conflict that started February 2022. And since then, the Ukraine has gotten 106 US billion dollars of aid in the spread of five major bills. That these five major bills are a total of 175 billion US dollars of aid. But also, but the majority has gone to Ukraine. Most of it is a military aid, but they also got economic and humanitarian aid for Ukraine and neighboring countries that are helping out the Ukrainian refugees who are fleeing from the country. And here in the graph, you can see how much of the US foreign aid has gone to the Ukraine conflict. As you can see, there are about 69 billion US dollars have gone to military equipment for Ukraine, and about 33 billion went for budget support as economic or humanitarian assistance. Another modern example of US foreign aid is the Gaza conflict that started in October 2023. Even though it just started, Israel has already received funding or aid from the US since 1948, and in total that has been 310 billion US dollars. But since the conflict, Israel has gotten 12.5 billion dollars of US foreign aid from the US. And as you can see, 8.7 billion are from the bill in April 2024, and 3.8 billion are from the bill in March 2024. And that the funding they've gotten from since the conflict, the 12.5 billion, are mainly used for military aid. And here in the graph, you can see how the Israel has used the US foreign aid. And you can see the majority was used for military aid, but also for economic aid. But since 2008, they haven't used that aid for economic reasons and only used it for military spending. However, these aids are subject to controversy, and political motivation often tie US assistance to strategic alliances, even when these partners like Israel, Egypt, or Saudi Arabia have troubling human rights records. This raises concerns about whether these aids support oppression. Moreover, there's an issue of the sustainability of these aids, because many of these programs address immediate needs but fail to resolve underlying causes of poverty and conflict, fostering a dependency of instead of a self-reliance for these countries.
So, is the United States sending too much money to overseas to aid in modern war efforts? So, based on my team's discussion on the U.S. foreign aid, I'll be going over the recent question, and that is if Americans are concerned that the U.S. foreign aid is sending too much money overseas. So, Terrence and Noah went over some points about the foreign aid and what they're sending over. The U.S. spends about 1% of its federal budget on foreign aid, which is around 70 billion a year. So a lot of people think that it's more than that, and it's only 1% of its federal budget. So it isn't that much that they're sending over. This money often helps with things like fighting poverty, improving health, and supporting development in other countries, and strengthens the international relationships. It also allows us to use our greatest asset, being the U.S. currency and our capital, to support nations and maintain market stability while discouraging nations we disagree with from gaining power. Some people feel it's too much, while people believe it's nec- it's necessary for global stability and to strengthen international relationships. Whether it's too much depends on your view on the U.S., and they should balance helping other country versus addressing domestic needs.